Take a good look at that front wing. Seriously, pause the vid if you have to and zoom in. Are you seeing what I'm seeing? Because if we actually believe this is what's going to hit the track in Bahrain, we're kidding ourselves. Red Bull just dropped the most important car in their recent history. The first one of the Ford era, the first one built 100% in-house with their own engine. And the feeling in my throat? It isn't excitement. It's doubt. That sketchy feeling you get in the back of your brain when you know someone's telling you a half-truth. They pulled the cover, the lights flashed, the music was bumping, and Max Verstappen flashed that media-trained PR smile. But the car? The car looks like a ghost. We were expecting a revolution. 2026, right? The year F1 gets flipped upside down. Active aero, electric motors with 50% of the power, shorter cars, narrower cars. This was supposed to be the moment Red Bull shut down everyone who said they couldn't survive without Honda. But what we saw on that stage earlier today wasn't a flex. It was a magic trick. It was smoke and mirrors. And I'm not just saying that to be a hater. Let's be real for a second. Red Bull has a history of messing with us during launches. Remember the RB18 back in 2022? That was literally the FIA show car with some sponsor stickers slapped on it. We spent weeks analyzing a car that didn't even exist. But this time? This feels deeper. The context is different. The pressure is different. It's not just about hiding their hand from Ferrari or Mercedes. It's about hiding whether the Ford Red Bull powertrains project is actually ready, or if they're scrambling to catch up. The detail that gives it all away is the floor. Anyone who knows the basics of ground effect knows that with the new 2026 regs, the floor edge is where the magic happens. That's where you seal the car to the track. That's where you find half a second a lap. And what did Red Bull show us? A straight line. A flat slab of carbon. No cuts, no winglets, nothing. It's like an engineering intern drew an F1 car from memory. Christian Horner can get on stage and talk about a new era and technical challenges all he wants, but that piece of carbon is screaming that they don't want to, or can't, show us anything. And you might ask me, so what? Everyone hides their game. The problem is the message it sends. In 2026, the integration between the chassis and that new power unit is brutal. The engine needs to breathe differently because the electric side generates crazy heat. The batteries are bigger, heavier. That changes the weight distribution, changes where you put the radiators. And the car we saw today? The side pods were practically identical to the old RB21 concept. That is physically impossible. If that Ford engine were actually sitting inside that chassis they presented, the thing would probably melt before finishing a single lap at Silverstone. This leads us to two possibilities, and neither of them is exactly comforting for the Milton Keynes fans. First one is the obvious one. The real car is so radical, so different, that showing even an inch of it would be handing the blueprint to Toto Wolff and Fred Vasseur. It's the super confidence theory. They've got a silver bullet tucked away in the garage and they're only going to pull it out when the shooting starts. That's what we want to believe, right? That the technical genius still lives there, even after all the key engineers left in the last few years. But then there's the second possibility. The one nobody in the mainstream media will say out loud, but it's all over the group chats of people who actually work in the paddock. What if the car is generic because the final concept isn't locked in yet? We've been hearing chatter all winter about correlation issues in the wind tunnel with the new active aero rules. The X mode and Z mode systems on the wings, opening and closing to cut drag. That's been a headache for every team, but Red Bull's silence on it has been deafening. When Mercedes has a problem, they leak that they have a problem to lower expectations. When Ferrari has a problem, the Italian press goes into full panic mode. When Red Bull has a problem, they put on a light show, hire a famous DJ, and show a fake car. That's their MO. Defense by offense. Marketing to cover up the engineering. And today, looking at Checo Perez's face on stage. He didn't look like a guy who just saw a championship-winning machine. He looked like a guy who read the script and is just hoping for a happy ending. There's a point a lot of people missed, but it's key. The suspension. The 2026 rules simplified the suspension to try and cut costs and complexity. They killed off some of the inertia tricks Red Bull mastered better than anyone. The car on stage had a front suspension geometry that looked old. It looked like the pull rod setup they've used for the last 4 years. But here's the thing. With the new narrower tires and the new weight distribution the FIA is demanding, keeping that same geometry is risky. Could it work? Maybe, but it looks lazy. Or, again, it looks like they took last year's chassis, painted it matte blue, slapped a giant Ford logo on it and said, "Here you go, guys." And speaking of Ford, let's touch on a sore spot. The technical partnership. They promised Ford would bring expertise in batteries, in high-voltage cell tech. That is the soul of the 2026 car. Without an efficient battery, you run out of juice halfway down the straight. You become a sitting duck. During the presentation, they talked a lot about legacy, about Ford's history in F1, showed some cool clips of the Cosworth engine from the 70s. Nostalgia is chill, it sells merch, but nostalgia doesn't generate horsepower. I wanted to hear about energy recovery. I wanted to hear how they solved the clipping issue. That's when the battery dies before the end of the lap. You know what they said about that? Zero. Nothing. Absolute silence. That's got me suspicious. Audi, who's entering now too, has been way more vocal about the technical challenges. Honda, now with Aston Martin, has been dropping data, showing confidence. Red Bull Ford is playing their cards extremely close to the chest. And in the poker game of Formula One, when you hold your cards that tight and don't say a word, it's usually because you're bluffing or because you're scared. Now think about Max for a second. Verstappen is no actor. The dude is terrible at hiding how he feels. If the car is a rocket, he gets arrogant, relaxed, jokes around with the journalists. If the car sucks, he gets irritable, short, and snappy. Today, he was neutral, bureaucratic. It's a new challenge. We're working hard. Canned lines, no spark in the eyes. None of those inside jokes with the engineer. That scares me the most. The driver who drove the car in the simulator, because you know the virtual model of the 2026 car is already logging hours and hours in Milton Keynes, he knows the truth. And Max's body language today was of someone who knows the start of the season is gonna be a war, not a walk in the park. And we can't ignore the elephant in the room, the competition. McLaren ended 2025 flying. Mercedes finally seems to have figured out what a ground effect car actually is. Ferrari, well, Ferrari is Ferrari, always a question mark, but with Hamilton there, the motivation is different. Red Bull doesn't have that 2022 or 2023 advantage anymore. The cushion is gone. They're entering 2026 on the same level, or maybe even a step behind, on engine development. If this chassis they showed is fake, great, classic strategy. But if this chassis is a sign that they're being conservative, that they didn't find any genius loophole in the regulations, then the dynasty is in real danger. Look at the engine cover on that launch car. The shark fin. In 2026, rear aerodynamic efficiency is crucial to make up for the loss of downforce. That chunky, rounded design we saw today? That creates drag. That is draggy. In a rule set where you have less combustion power and rely on electric, drag is death. You can't afford to push unnecessary air. I refuse to believe the team that built the RB19, the most efficient car in history, designed that thing as the final version. Yeah, it has to be bait. They put a purposely inefficient part on there so we'd talk trash, while the real, skinny, shrink-wrapped part is hidden in a vault somewhere. But this tactic gets old. As a fan, it's exhausting. We want to see the engineering. We want to see the innovation. We wake up early, pay for the streaming, buy the t-shirts, and we get a fiberglass model that isn't even good enough to be a paperweight. It's a subtle disrespect to the intelligence of people who actually follow the sport technically. Do they think we just want to see the new paint job? The paint is the same as always. Changed a shade of blue here, a red line there for Ford, but it's the same visual identity for a decade. If the paint isn't new and the car is fake, what was this event for? It was to calm the investors down. It was to show Ford that their money is generating headlines. But for me and you, who want to know if Max is going to have the car to fight for his 5th or 6th title? It was useless. If anything, it just spiked the anxiety. Because now we have to wait until preseason testing to see if there's a real side pod, if there's a worked floor, if there's an active wing that doesn't look like it's made of Lego. And there's one more thing few people noticed: the brakes. The front brake ducts. In 2026, the rear brakes are purely electronic, total brake-by-wire. But up front, you still need heavy cooling. The intakes they showed were tiny, ridiculously small to stop a car that, even though it's lighter on paper, is still a speed monster. That gives it away that the internals, the drums, the ducts, none of that was mounted. It was a hollow car, an empty shell. The real danger for Red Bull isn't us thinking the car is ugly or fake. The danger is them being so focused on hiding the game that they lose useful track time. It happened to Mercedes back in the day. They hid the zero-pod concept so much that when they finally put it on track and saw it didn't work, it was too late. Technical arrogance is a silent disease in F1. It kills you slowly. You think you're smarter than the rulebook, smarter than physics, until the stopwatch slaps you in the face in Q3 in Bahrain. I wanted to be here saying, "Wow, did you see that blown diffuser solution?" Or, "Incredible how they integrated the chassis with the battery." But I can't. I have to talk about what I didn't see, about the void. Red Bull invited us to a banquet and served empty plates. And the worst part? We ate it up. We watched, we shared, we're here debating. The marketing worked, but the engineering? That's the big question mark. If Ford actually delivered a dud of an engine, or if Red Bull Powertrains is behind schedule, this generic launch is the perfect smokescreen. Don't look at the engine. Look at this cool matte paint. It's the old magician's trick. While the right hand waves the colorful handkerchief, the left hand hides the card up the sleeve. But in Formula 1, that hidden card has to work at 220 Nm. And no magician can save a car that's born bad. The feeling is total déjà vu. Same story every year. But this year, with everything changing, with the risk of the pecking order flipping upside down, the stakes are way higher. If Red Bull drops the ball on this 2026 car, it's not just a bad year. It's the beginning of the end of an era. Max has exit clauses. Mercedes and Aston Martin are watching. A bad car now could cost them the driver of a generation. And maybe that's why the vibe at the launch was so sterile, so controlled. They know what's on the line. At the end of the day, were we played? Yeah. Of course we were. We always are. But that's not the right question. The real question is, are they playing us because they're geniuses who unlocked the secret to eternal speed in 2026? Or are they playing us because they're lost and just bought some time? The line between genius and desperation in Formula 1 is razor thin, and today, on that stage, Red Bull walked right on top of it. Now it's your turn to be the judge. Do you trust Adrian Newey's legacy, even with the team changes and Red Bull's cash? Or do you think this whole calm vibe and this plastic car are signs that the rain is over? Don't sit on the fence. Tell me down below. Did Red Bull hide the game out of strength or weakness? I'm reading everything for the first 30 minutes.